Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start in a few minutes. There's plenty of room at the table.
My dad just turned 80, and they live like a month to the market. He had 80. He works out every morning at this, Porcelana Socialist. Beautiful rec center.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would encourage you to take a seat at the table. There's plenty of room, I think. We'd love to see you close up.
It was great working on that project.
Yeah, I know. I look forward to tracking all this.
Hello, Councilman.
Hello.
Fine, good to see you again. So I was thinking that when you asked that question about promotion, so you weren't planning ahead with
No, I hadn't even thought of it, but it's obviously something that seems to make sense here too. So you probably want to speak about that again, right?
I'll be happy to.
It's more on you. Do you want to move down? Or over it? You can also just pull out your sunglasses and do a very LA thing. It's like, gosh, that's so... It's never
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. How about those boys in blue?
How about that?
Isn't it? That was a very exciting, would have been nice to have a sweep, but they got it done. We just need them to do that again, right? Okay. We welcome you this morning to the Tourism 29th Annual Business Conference. My name is Mark Davis. I'm associated with this fine hotel as general manager and one of the breakfast sponsors. I hope you enjoyed breakfast. I hope you got to eat a nice meal. I hope you enjoyed the discussion. It was quite a rich discussion hearing about the economy in our last panel. Let's thank our panel sponsors, the 4 and 2 NFC West leading Los Angeles Rams, and our track sponsors, California Lutheran University and Woodbury University. At your seats, you will find a piece of paper that looks like this. Please do complete that before you leave the session this morning. Your feedback is very important to VICA as they make plans for the future. They want to keep these panels and events as exciting as possible, and your feedback is vital to that, so please do so. There's a lot happening in tourism today, a lot happening in LA. We have, as you learned earlier, crossed over more than 47 million visitors this past year, headed toward the 50 million visitors by 2020. We're very excited about that. But we want to welcome you to the Voyage to La La Land panel. We have, I think, the best looking panel among the whole panel tracks today. Right? Great team here. We have a great lineup. The biographies of each of these panels are already in your journal, so please read those. But we'd like to welcome Dr. Sarah Fischbach, the Associate Professor, School of Management at the California Lutheran University. Sarah, we welcome you.
Thank you.
Ranjan Goswami, Vice President of Los Angeles Sales West at Delta Airlines. And our Mr. Paul Krekorian, our Los Angeles City Council. Mr. Krekorian, glad to have you. Thank you. And Ms. Patti MacJennett, Senior Vice President for the Los Angeles Tourism and Convention Board. We're glad to have you. Thank you. I would like for each of the panelists to give a couple of minutes, and we'll start with my immediate right first with Patti, giving just a couple of minute opening session about our industry, and then we'll go into some questions. Patti?
All right, thanks very much. And of course, you already mentioned the biggest headlines right here. One more for Go Blue. I'd like to take credit for booking the World Series, but I don't think we could. That's maybe going a little too far. But we certainly know it's going to be bringing in, depending on which team wins, the other half will probably impact how many visitors we do have from out of town. But clearly, it is going to be an economic driver. And I want to thank Stuart, I don't know if I see him in here, but MVICA for putting tourism on the agenda, because tourism has become such a powerful economic driver in Los Angeles County. You heard Mark just mention that we last year had over 47 million visitors. Those visitors directly spent $22 billion, and when you add in the induced and the economic or the indirect, you come to about $33.6 billion into the Los Angeles County economy. As we look forward, you know, the future looks pretty rosy. We're on pace to break one more record at going up to 48 million visitors. We do see that the pace of growth is beginning to slow a little bit. We couldn't keep this magic carpet ride that we've been on forever, but we do still anticipate growth. And that is true in all of the regions. If you look just real quickly at the occupancy levels, which is a big indicator and of course also is a big generator of TOT tax for city budgets, we're looking at about 81% occupancy, which is, I mean, for an area that's as geographically dispersed as Los Angeles, it's incredible. And if we look here in the Valley, it's about running at about 79% occupancy, which is down just a little bit from last year, but that really has to do with the Porter Ranch impact. And if you take that out of it, the Valley hotels are looking actually at hotel demand of about 2% growth. So there's lots of other things to talk about in terms of what's happening in new infrastructure in Los Angeles, but I think you said only 2 minutes, so I'll wrap it with that for now.
Okay, thank you, Patty. Councilman Krekorian?
Thank you, Mark. Thanks very much for hosting us today, and thank you all for coming and participating today. This is one of my favorite topics, and I'm glad that so many people came to participate in this and understand its importance to the future of Los Angeles as well. Just to take one step back as to why there's a city councilman sitting on this panel, let me tell you the various hats that I wear that relate to this. I chair our Budget and Finance Committee of the council. So I'm obviously deeply concerned about the topic Patty just raised, our temporary occupancy tax, our sales tax revenues that are generated by international and other visitors. Those are vitally important to the future of the city and our ability to basically to provide basic services. I serve on I chair our ad hoc committee on creating a comprehensive job creation strategy. Obviously, tourism and the hospitality industry generally is central to the continuing economic growth of this city. It's one of the things that we do really well and that we need to do a lot more of to continue to generate the economic success that we've seen in Los Angeles. I serve on the Metro Board and the MetroLink Board, so our transit system and the way that relates to our tourism industry is very important to me. And I serve on our ad hoc committee on the Olympics. So, and there's and the committee that oversees the port and the airport as well. So, and tourism, yes, and goes without saying, I guess. So, in all of those capacities, let me just say, first of all, that even aside from the Dodgers going to the World Series, this is a great time for Los Angeles right now. When I was sworn into the council in 2010, things were not so rosy here. We were facing some real challenges and projecting budget deficits in coming years of over $1 billion. And you know, former Mayor Reardon was certain, he wrote an editorial for the Wall Street Journal, that he was certain that the city would declare bankruptcy within a few years. And as we've seen the progress that we've made over the last few years, we've seen that has not only has none of that come to pass, but this is a time where when you drive around the city and you see the private investment that's pouring in from all over the world, when you see the International Olympic Committee awarding us the 2028 Olympics, when you see the people of Los Angeles voting to tax themselves to invest in their transit future, for example, these are all strong statements of confidence in our future by our own residents, by the business community, by the international community. And I think that's really borne out by a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about today. And we have become, again, a really prime destination for tourism. As Patty said, we're setting records. Not only did we set a record last year, this is the 6th consecutive year in a row that we've broken our record, previous record for total visitors to Los Angeles. LAX breaks a record every single year in passengers. Our TOT has been up for at least 6 consecutive years, that our temporary occupancy tax has increased each year, and that matters to the people here. Our TOT generates over $250 million in revenues for this city a year. $250 million pays for a lot of police and a lot of firefighters and a lot of the services that the people of Los Angeles depend upon. So we're doing well. I think we're going to discuss some things today, hopefully, that we can all focus on doing better. But the main takeaway I'd like you to have is this is a very, very positive time looking forward for the city of Los Angeles, and it's largely because of our hospitality and tourism industry. So thank you all who are part of that industry. We continue to be your partner and want to make sure you continue to flourish here so that our city flourishes with you. Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you, Councilman. Dr. Fischbach.
Good morning. I'm Sarah Fischbach. I'm an assistant professor at California Lutheran University. It's in Thousand Oaks, California, if you're familiar with that area, just about an hour north of here. I'm a professor of marketing, and I come here on the perspective of the millennials and all of the next generation. We were talking about it earlier, about what tourism and what the future of the city of Los Angeles was going to look like for the next generation. And it's a little bit different for what students think. And I interviewed a few students just to talk to them about what they thought about, what they're going to do after college, which I'm always talking to them when I'm advising them. And some of them don't want to stay. It's too expensive. They can't afford a home. They look for the dreams in Texas, and they look for the dreams in Colorado. So I might be the devil's advocate for a couple reasons. I actually grew up in Chicago, so I'm a Cubs fan. Sorry. Yeah, it's okay though. I still, whenever it's not the Cubs playing the Dodgers, I'm definitely rooting for the Dodgers. Go Puig! So, I know, yeah, that's what we always say, right? So that's what I'm going to come from. I'm going to talk about brand stories and experiences that students expect with their brands and their stories, and how they will represent where they live and where the future is going to come from them. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Goswami.
Thanks, Mark, and also a thanks to you. Earlier this year, I hosted about 150 of my team here at this hotel. It's a great property, and we had a really good meeting. And in fact, meeting and conventions is a big part of how I think we need to think about our tourism strategy in LA, and we'll get into that. But on behalf of Delta Airlines, I'm here today. I've been in LA for 5 years, and I will echo what my fellow panelists have talked about, and I think all of you as Angelinos in the greater LA area see this. This city is undergoing an incredible renaissance. And from Delta's perspective, there are a couple of stats that I think just show and demonstrate this. The first is LAX since 2009 has increased its enplanements by 59%. That is unprecedented. There is no other airport in the United States that does this. I'm very proud to tell you that Delta has increased our capacity here by 106% over the same period of time. So what we're seeing in our industry is a concerted need for more supply to the LA market, because this is truly the world's most important single airport destination. So when you look at LAX and the LA Basin airports, most of the traffic is going to LAX significantly, like 90% plus is LAX bound. In New York, which is a comparable size market, it's really split much more evenly between the 3 airports in the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, right? Newark, JFK, LaGuardia. So LA is actually the #1 revenue airport in the country. And the other really interesting stat about LA is it really is America's doorstep for the rest of the world. We are the #1 gateway for people coming from China. 1 of every 4 customers traveling between China and the United States comes to LA. Oceania, it's 1 out of 3 customers from Australia and New Zealand. Mexico and the transborder, it's we're #1, and Chicago #2 is less than half our size. We only fall, and Canada we're #1, tied with Las Vegas, funnily enough. Don't understand that, but And the only place where we fall to number 2 is for Europe, where you'd expect New York to beat LA on that, and on deep South America, where obviously Miami wins there. But LA is the global city for the world to want to come and see, and I think we have a real opportunity in how we market this city to the world. And so the final point I'll just make to you all, in addition to this being this global city, is I think we've also realized we need to do a better job, all of us, to build capacity for tourists to come here. Clearly at the airport, we have a very, very exciting master plan. I want to thank the council member, the entire city council, the mayor, the previous mayor, for their vision of really having a master plan that is going to get us to a world-class facility. I know it seems like it's far from now, and in some ways, as an operator there, I will tell you it does seem very far. But Delta alone is spending $2 billion to completely rebuild Terminals 2 and 3 connected to Tom Bradley, and I think that is just one of many projects going on at the airport. So all of these things coming together, the fact that we are an amazing destination, the fact that we're on this incredible growth path, and the fact that we're building capacity to enable more heads in beds and more people at amusement parks and at more people spending at our restaurants and all of these things, the airport obviously is a key driver of that.
Thank you. Well, I think you can hear that LA is very attractive. I call it preparation and timing. Important to be prepared. We have a lot coming our way, the 2028 Olympics, the World Series in a few days. We must be prepared, and it's all about timing to deliver that. And I think we have some great questions for our panel this morning to help us understand that, and we certainly want to take some questions from you. So we'll start with Dr. Fischbach. Dr. Fischbach, the landscape of tourism is changing. I think you call them millennials. So can you speak a little bit about how that group is going to change the economy of how tourism, how travel is affected?
Sure, yeah, I can talk about that. So I'm sure you have a picture in your head of what your European vacation looks like. Do you have that picture in your head? That picture in your head is not the same as what a millennial student has. They picture flying out of LAX, probably not on Delta, going on Ethiopian Air for $2.99, direct into London. Well, they'll get off the plane and take a cab, not one of those nice, like the European taxi cabs, you know what I'm talking about, just a regular taxi, to their Airbnb. Well, they'll get their number out of a code, out of a box, and they'll stay at somebody's private home for a week, which won't be in a Hilton, and then they'll do their own thing. They won't go on any tours, they'll find their way through experiences outside of what a traditional European experience, not regular consumers, but older consumers might see. So we call it the gig economy. They're looking for different ways to find their own brand story and how they create themselves and their experiences in their life. And tourism is part of that. How are they able to build their own story when they're going out there and visiting LAX? Los Angeles. So that's something we need to think about, is it's not the way that we normally travel, and how can we connect with them? And I think you had some great ideas with what Delta is doing to connect with consumers with the Snapchat and the stories, correct? I think you should share that story now, don't you think?
I will definitely follow what the professor tells me to do.
Yeah, I think that you should, because it fits well with the experiences that students are looking at.
No, great, thank you. We were talking about how in the prior days of marketing, it was more simple. You could do a basic sponsorship, pay a bunch of money, and your brand goes up, right, in the stadium or what have you. And Delta does that a lot around the country. What we're finding with today's consumers is you have to go deeper, and you have to provide better meaning, more relevancy to them. So last year, I'm proud to say we were the first airline and first company in America to do a scavenger hunt on Snapchat. And I'll try and explain it better than I did to the councilman when we were chatting, because I realized even I don't understand it.
You explained it very well.
Right?
I just have a generation that doesn't understand it.
But basically what we tried to do was, this is a city of neighborhoods, right? If you think about how LA Tourism markets LA, they do a really fantastic job saying, listen, this is a massive city, but it's 80, 90 neighborhoods, each with a very unique perspective and personality. And so we wanted to bring out the neighborhoods on the one hand. On the other hand, what we wanted to do was demonstrate the fact that we work with all sorts of amazing people in this city at Delta. And so we picked Brandon Ingram at the Lakers, and we found that he has a really inspiring story, not just for how he got to become a Laker, but also his off-court interests in street art. And so what we did was partnered him with a street artist in LA, created some social buzz, and gave some clues on Snapchat around, hey, if you're a Brandon Ingram fan, if you're a Laker fan, did you know this about him? But what neighborhood would he be painting some street art in, right? And we did that, and we replicated that throughout LA's neighborhoods. And we did about 7 or 8 different scavenger hunts. And what we found was the millennial consumer thought that that was pretty cool, okay? And we got more brand recognition, we got more credit, we got more positive scores than any traditional sponsorship we've ever done. And so what it showed us, and I think this is Professor Fischbach's point, is we've got to be more relevant, and in a world where we are competing against many other cities, right? We have tourism dollars, just like the Angelino student who's going to Europe, hopefully on Delta, not on Ethiopian Airlines, by the way. We've got to make sure we're attracting the student from London and Dublin and all these other places around the world, from Mexico City, from Hong Kong, right? We want them to come to LA and spend some time here and share stories about LA with their family and friends when they go back home. So I think these types of marketing strategies are really important, and not just for businesses, but for how the city itself markets itself.
Ranjan, I'm sure you track where the tourists come from. What markets should we be focused on?
Yeah, great question. We had 7 million international visitors last year, which is pretty exciting and growing at a fast clip. In fact, every week I have a minor heart attack with the next new foreign airline that's starting nonstop service into LA. This is the most competitive international airport, and it's fantastic. It means consumers have more choices. And we have to earn the business, right? The big markets that we see growing super fast, Mexico is massive and growing fast. It is the #1 transborder market, and Mexicans, consumers, are getting more and more spending power, and they want to come to LA. They've got a lot of ties to LA culturally and with family, but this is just such a great destination for them. So one of the things we're actually doing is partnerships, right? So we actually own half of Aeromexico in hope to try to market to Mexicans living in Mexico City and all across Mexico to come here. Australia is a very, very big market, growing very, very fast. The Australians are very unique. They will come for 4 to 6 weeks at a time, okay? And it's unlike any other consumer demographic you've ever seen. Whether it's a kid or a family coming, the Aussies and the Kiwis want to come here and spend a lot of time. So we've got to figure out how LA is the place they start and end their journey in the United States, right? And it's a very different type of marketing than with the Mexican traveler who, by the way, wants more of a weekend, couple-of-day trip kind of thing. The UK continues to be a major point for us, obviously. That's a more traditional, what I'd call, leisure footprint here, where we're seeing people come, spend between 5 and a week and a half here and going back, exploring Southern California. And then, of course, China. China is fascinating. In the same way that Japan was the country of groups back in the 80s and 90s, and we would see Japanese tourist groups all around the world, right? Famous for taking their photos. The Chinese groups have become that as well. And what you've seen with the Japanese tourists is they're doing less groups, right? And we're noticing this sort of trend with developing countries where as their consumers get more confident to travel around the world, they start with groups because that's an easier way to do it. And then as they get more wealthy and more experienced, they go and do more individual traveling. So China is very much at the group stage. And I'll give you one stat on China that I think really tells you how fast it is growing. It used to be in the United States when we would start any international flight or any foreign airline would start a flight, 60 to 80% point of sale was in the United States. And a much smaller point of sale was from the international country. On our LA-Shanghai daily flight now, we are pushing almost 60% China point of sale. And that switch has happened in just the last 4 years. So again, what are we doing about it? Well, we actually have a partner, and we made an equity investment in China Eastern, and we want to ultimately one day have a joint venture with them like we do with the European partners that we have. And we basically are having to find partners around the world to help market this. But those are the main countries that we are on the lookout for.
Okay, outstanding.
Can I just add one thing too with
Yes,
respect to China? To also put it in perspective, you know, Mexico and Canada have been our #1 and our #2 largest international markets. 10 years ago, almost 11 years ago, when we first opened an office in China, there was like less than 100,000 visitors, and our mayor at the time thought we were absolutely crazy to be doing that. And it is now our #2 largest international market. It jumped over Canada. We're expecting this year almost 1.4 million visitors from China. So we now have 4 offices. We just opened our 4th office just a couple months ago. So it is enormous in terms of its growth as well. The other one I just wanted to mention was India. India is now on our radar. It's kind of still where maybe China was years ago, but we expect it to grow at a much faster pace. If you look at the education, you know, just the whole demographics in terms of, you know, their ability to speak English, their economic, you know, their wages, their salaries, their interest in the United States. So that's another one that I would say keep on your radar.
Thank you, Patty. Councilman Ranjan mentioned partnerships. How can we, or what partnerships can we leverage in LA to attract more visitors?
Well, I think 2 of the most critical areas for partnership have already been mentioned: marketing and capacity. And in both of those areas, we need to do a lot more. Just on the marketing point, first of all, you know, I don't know that Patty's shop does a great job of trying to push the message of LA, but I'm not sure that we've done that broadly enough over the years. So forgive me, VICA staff, but take the name of this panel, for example. Voyage to La La Land. Really? Really? There continues to be this, at least within the United States, I don't know if it's true internationally as well, but this kind of image of Los Angeles of being this sort of superficial place by the beach, and, you know, there's nothing older than 5 years here, and, you know, that's fine for a segment of the tourism industry. But we're a place with a deep, rich, important history. We're a place of great diversity that has just about you know, every kind of cultural and ethnic root you could have here in the city. We're a place that's on the cutting edge of so many areas of interest to people, whether it's cuisine, art, you know, the clothing and fashion industry. We're a place of innovation, you know, when it comes to creating new industries. So there's a lot of exciting, deep, important things that are happening in Los Angeles that should be more known as a part of our story that people want to come and experience. Our arts and culture. We have the Lucas Museum opening in Exposition Park. His own hometown couldn't deliver the Lucas Museum. He came to Los Angeles and is going to spend $1 billion building a museum that is going to be an international destination. You look at, you know, the Disney Hall, and you look at the Broad Museum, and all these things where people are investing huge amounts of private money in creating this dynamic, exciting cultural destination, not La La Land, you know. So I think we have to kind of get that message out. That's number one. In terms of capacity, you know, whether it's hotel space, which and forgive me, Mark, but we got to get you more competition. I mean, we are way below capacity when it comes to hotel space. And, you know, judging by the way the parking lot looked this morning, for example, I mean, things are going well when it comes to the hotel industry. We need more hotel capacity in order to accommodate particularly large national and international conventions and things like that. The gig economy is going to certainly shape the direction of the hotel industry and what we invest there, but it can't accommodate the convention of the AMA or something. The gig economy is not going to take care of that. We need big hotels, lots more of them. So that's one thing. We got to invest more in our transit, which we're doing, and the improvements to LAX, which we're already investing in. All of these are partnerships that are going to be important And I want to just make reference again to the importance of the Olympics in focusing our attention on all those things. Because whether, you know, we've been racing to get these transit investments done in time for the Olympics. And frankly, I'm a little relieved we have 2028 instead of 2024.
No, don't
because,
say that. Don't say
well,
that.
because there were, you know, a few deadlines that, yeah, we were probably going to make them by 2024, but now by 2028, there's no question we'll have LAX connected. It'll be seamless. We'll have, you know, 5 more rail lines that'll be, you know, in service by then. So there's a lot of good investment that's going on that's all focused around that Olympics. That's going to encourage more hotel investment. It's going to encourage more investment in you know, all areas of the hospitality industry, really, and I think that that's going to increase capacity, which will accommodate the larger tourism industry between now and then and after as well. And then the last thing I would say is that all of these things provide a real opportunity for community development as well, which benefits the people of Los Angeles. So as and I was speaking to somebody earlier about how the World's Fair that came to Vancouver a few years ago spurred all this development, redevelopment of the downtown area. That was a great impetus for a lot of international investment there, but it had long-lasting effects in sort of reconfiguring the face of Vancouver's downtown. And we have a lot of those opportunities now too. As we're looking towards the Olympics, we can really build a more aesthetic, more walkable and bikeable and exciting Los Angeles while we're adding that capacity for our tourism as well. It adds quality of life for the people of Los Angeles as well.
Excellent, thank you. Patti, we obviously are attracting a lot of tourism, and it's growing. Once they get here, are we doing a good job taking care of them, and how can we serve them better to keep them and send the word out for more to come?
Well, as you know, the majority of our resources certainly are spent in getting them here, but we are just as concerned that they have a good experience when they are here, because obviously those are the ones who will come back for repeat visits, and we all know that, you know, word of mouth is still incredibly, it's the strongest recommendation you can get. So a lot of our visitors today are the millennials, and so we are trying to communicate with them while they are here. We're even actually trying to track them when they have seen some of our advertisements. It's kind of creepy, actually, but and we're able to see that how many of them actually have converted and have landed in Los Angeles. So we haven't, though, gotten to the point where we're going to interface with them while they're here. But what we have done is we've just released a new app. It's Discover Los Angeles, Discover LA app, and I encourage all of you to download it. It's been really well received. We actually started this with, speaking of partnerships, with the Los Angeles County Art Commission. They had gotten a grant from Metro, and they wanted to identify and promote the different cultural institutions. So we did that in terms of mapping it. Then we added the hotels, we've added the restaurants, we've added the attractions. And so it's very intuitive in terms of where you are at the moment to tell you what's going on and the areas around you, but you can also access information for other parts of Los Angeles. So that's something we're very excited about. We are looking to continue to expand that. Sarah talked about the fact that you know, the millennials are all about technology, and so we live on social media. We have a very robust program, and so we're trying to communicate with them that way as well. We do have our traditional visitor information centers. We have a presence in Hollywood. We are opening at the new Wilshire Grand Plaza a new visitor information center. We have one also at Union Station, and we just are now partnered with San Pedro Chamber of Commerce to work with them to have a visitor information location there, which we're looking to do more of that partnering going forward as well. We're also working on a program which will be an integrated network that we hope to be able to intercept more of the visitors. I can't really talk about it at this point, but hopefully in another 6 months I'll be telling you all about it. So we're very excited about that. And then we do some things like behind the scenes. So when we have the convention groups coming in, we have a Show Your Badge program that we partner with the local businesses, local restaurants, and they give them discounts. We were the first ones to launch a China Ready program, where we went out to the hotels and helped really train them on how do you be the most hospitable for some of our international guests. That program has now been picked up by Visit California, but we are doing more and more of that kind of thing to make sure we're ready and we are sensitive to the many cultural, mannerisms, what things that they need, whether it's food or it's slippers in your room or whatever. So that's very important to us.
Very good.
Mark, if I can just add on, because Patty reminded me, another area for really fruitful partnership that Patty's already way ahead on, and the rest of us have to be as well, is jointly marketing Los Angeles with California, with the rest of the county, because when it comes to attracting a Costco, I really care a lot whether it's on this side of the Burbank border or the other side. That matters to me a lot. When it comes to attracting tourists, it really doesn't so much. I'd love to have them stay in a Los Angeles hotel, but when they come to this region, they're affecting our regional economy, and we want to grab as much of that into this area as we can. So it's silly for us to be marketing the city of Los Angeles one way, Santa Monica another way, the state of California another way. Bringing all those efforts together and combining them into a single message that Southern California is a great place for you to come to is going to benefit everybody. All boats rise as more tourists.
Great message.
I'd like to add something about perceptions of privacy that you were talking about. I know that people are concerned about privacy when it comes to location settings on your social media and different types of technology that you use. I don't know, are you guys concerned about that? Sure. Students are not. They don't care. They want the coupons. They want the discounts. They want you to go ahead and target them. They want you to track them. Now, in 5 years, will they want you to do that? Maybe not. That's a different question. But right now, they got nothing to lose, and they don't have money. So they're like, yes, bring on the location settings. Bring on the invasion of privacy, because I want to be tracked. And we can gain that knowledge right now to help them, or help us try to figure out where they're going, what they're doing, so that we can predict what's going to happen for their travel.
Excellent. Before we open it up for you to ask questions, I have one question for the panel at large. We've talked about preparation, timing, opportunity, capacity. We are attracting more, and to get the bigger conventions that the other larger cities have that we've never been able to because of hotel rooms, because of the convention center itself, how can we break the barrier of the resistance of neighborhoods and even some of the council to adopt a quicker method of increasing our capacity to bring more tourism in? Any thoughts on that from the panel? More hotel rooms, more competition.
It's funny because in my experience, hotel development has not been, high on the list of targets for neighborhood opposition as much as some other kinds of development, because you're usually not developing hotels anywhere near residential neighborhoods and so on. You've had kind of a big battle here because of the larger picture of Universal City and its impact on the region. But I think most of my colleagues really are eager to see more hotel development. It's more of an economic challenge, I think, for us, because the trend has been now that no hotel can get built in Los Angeles without a subvention agreement to, operate tax-free essentially for the next forever. Those of you who are sort of our legacy hotels might look at that and say, not so much, we're doing fine. So there is that kind of tension between the spreadsheet that shows that we just love to build a hotel in your fine city, but I'm sorry, you're going to have to subsidize this. And so that's the biggest tension from my perspective, is getting a deal that is going to make long-term economic benefits for the city and for our budget. That's far more important to me than the land use issues.
Okay. Any other comments from the panel on that?
Well, if I could just add to that. I actually do applaud City Council and some of our leaders, because certainly around the convention center we've been in really desperate need of hotel rooms, and so they had set a goal that to build about 8,000 rooms by 2020, and I think we started out around 2,500, and these are rooms that are in walking distance to the convention center, which, as you know, is so important as part of the package. And I think we're up to about 5,600 rooms, and with conversations continuing. So we're coming from 2,500 to getting to 5,600 to a goal of 80,000 by 2020. I think we're in pretty. We're on track. We still need more, and I know we'll continue to push, but that will, and the reason I mentioned the convention center, I realize we're in the valley, but as we fill the hotels and we fill that convention center, that, generates compression for the hotels outside of the downtown area, to the Hollywood and out to the valley, very much so. I was looking at the valley numbers, and it looks like there's, two just opened in Glendale and in Burbank, and then there's about, I think, a total of 11 properties that are going to open over the next, till 2020 for about another 1,400 rooms in the valley.
Yes.
So that's encouraging.
Some growth.
And we want some of those to be yours.
Thank you.
I'll just add from sort of a different perspective on this. One of our newest SkyMiles partners to earn miles is Airbnb. And I will tell you that it is the fastest growing of all of our hotel partners or stay partners, right? So we've long done business with Hilton and Starwood and Marriott, and of course people like earning their miles when they stay at those hotels. But the Airbnb relationship is growing very, very fast, and I think that probably speaks to the need in general for more hotel rooms. And but I think it also speaks to the fact that people want to have unique experiences too. And we're seeing the hotel industry do this. Even the big brands are creating more small, unique, boutique-type brands to create a better, more memorable experience. And we see boutique hotels having a renaissance happening all over the country and all over the world as well. And so from our perspective, we're agnostic where people stay, but what we're finding is that as we think about our loyalty program, having all these partnerships makes a lot of sense. One that's not related to accommodation is Lyft. So every time you take a Lyft, you can earn SkyMiles. And I will tell you, it is astonishing what we're seeing in terms of people liking that, right? And because they're using Lyft so much more, or Uber, than they ever had in their lives, all of a sudden this is becoming a really exciting way. So some of the new gig economy items that Professor Fischbach was talking about, I think, are really catching on. A lot of new consumers want to have those experiences too. So as a region, we've got to think about how do we make sure we have enough big hotel properties for the convention business and the business woman and man who comes here. But at the same time, how do we have customized properties as well? And how do we do more things like the shared economy is trying to, I think, unlock here.
Okay, very good. Well, we have a lot of expertise at the front table here. That wouldn't include me necessarily, but I would say it's time for hearing from you. Let's ask some questions. Make them hard questions.
That Mark
Let's
will
test
answer.
it. Yes.
I'd like to know if you're seeing impacts in terms of international tourism from the Trump administration's travel ban and policies and President Trump's rhetoric, and if you're seeing impacts on international tourism, are those impacts felt differently in Los Angeles than other tourist destinations in other parts of the country, or is it pretty much a nationwide impact?
I think I'll take a stab at that. It's very interesting, and it's an interesting question that you raised, because when all of the rhetoric first started about the travel ban and all of that, we joined U.S. Travel in doing sentiment studies. And so they were doing one for the United States as a whole, and then we did one just for Los Angeles. And we've just got back preliminary results yesterday, so I haven't looked at it completely. But Los Angeles is looked at differently than the rest of the United States. The countries that was Mexico, China, Australia, and the UK that we have surveyed in particular. And all of them, Australia is a little bit different, but all of them see Los Angeles as a welcoming place, a place to dream about going to. And if you look at, because originally when we were doing this, we thought that we were going to be down about 800,000 visitors. And so we really, jumped into it and put a whole welcome initiative campaign together. And not that that has helped it, but I think what we did do was celebrate what the councilman was talking about earlier, our diversity and the fact that we are an aspirational type of place. And it went viral in 2 days. It was seen all throughout Mexico. It was just incredible numbers of exposure. And so we have seen that the drops were not as much as we thought they would be. Mexico, we thought it was going to be much worse. For Los Angeles, it hasn't been that bad. So we're very encouraged by what we're seeing on the sentiment studies. We certainly, we are expecting still growth in the international market. We do expect it to be a little slower.
I'm pleased to hear that because anecdotally, it's been a big concern of mine. And I appreciate you raising the question, Ted. I can say it now, now that it's done, but when the travel ban was announced, my first thought was, we just lost the 2024 Olympics. It's gone. Mm-hmm. Because when you're reaching out to an audience of 120 IOC members, and a whole bunch of them are coming from countries that we just insulted, or belong to a faith that we just insulted, I just thought it's over. And I think the reason that we actually got 2028 is because everyone knows that will no longer be a concern, no matter what, in 2020. So, so I'm pleased to hear that, but I do think it's that rhetoric is going to have a continuing adverse effect in a lot of ways. Maybe not as bad as we feared, but there are going to be international conferences. There are going to be other things that maybe we would have been able to compete for that we can't compete for as long as we're seen as being part of that sort of viewpoint.
Yeah, no, I would agree that we are not out of the woods on that. Just the good news being that we're faring better than the East Coast is, and that's because a lot of Europeans. We have a lot of Asian visitors who are less preoccupied by that. But if you look at, the climate's not changing, and so we continue to be concerned.
I think the bigger issue too is there's a lot of uncertainty around the world, right? So China now growing closer to 6% versus their usual 7%. That's a big problem, right? And we're seeing visitation. While visitation continues to go up, we're seeing the rate of that growth to slow. And things like Brexit has done a lot of damage. But a lot of British citizens now, with the pound being weaker, are traveling less. And so in our business, we're trying to get more Americans to fly to the UK on a bargain, right? And so I think there's a lot of things going on. And I think as we all get into 2018, we've got to be wary of all that stuff because I think it's going to have an effect. It's unclear how. But there's certain places where just there's a lot of other things going on in addition to what's happening in our country.
Very good. Thank you for the question. Someone else? Yes.
Outside the U.S., this industry differentiates on service. Asia, Middle East, North Africa. My expectation of service now is if I get on United, I won't be back on. And I'm holding on the other, but they've had their share of publicity. All of this then puts a damper on tourism. How do we fix the service issue?
Well, this is a great topic. Let me say a couple of things. The first is I think every industry that has frontline facing employees is realizing that in today's world, everything you do is public. And by the way, that's true for workers as well as for consumers, right? We see some pretty incredible consumers who do all sorts of things. And the beauty of the internet is, guess what? It's going to get around if you're not decent. Having said all of that, I think we are very excited for a couple of reasons. One is we've just had a tradition of people who really care about working at our company. And I won't go through all the accolades that we're winning right now on this stuff, but there is a sense of pride at Delta that is very, very tangible. And when people like Fortune and others are recognizing us as a best place to work, not just a company that makes a lot of money, I think that starts to tell you you're on the right track. We are on track on Valentine's Day of next year to distribute for 4 times in a row over $1 billion of profit sharing to our people. So from a baggage handler to a pilot to a flight attendant to someone who's helping keep the terminals clean, everyone's participating in that. And in fact, we haven't found another company in corporate American history that has shared $1 billion of its profits, let alone for 4 years in a row. Our goal is to keep doing that. And the reason I tell you that is because I think in order to change the mindset of how our workers serve our customers, we have to also take care of our people, right? And for us, it's a very simple formula. If we take care of our people, pay them well, train them, and give them the tools to succeed, they will take care of our customers will vote with their wallets and come back and take care of our shareholders, who will give us more capital to reinvest in our people, and the cycle goes on. It's pretty simple to say, it's really hard to do, but I think that we have to do more of that in general, and we're super committed to that. So, you know, the one sort of proof point in my mind for our company, and I'm only going to speak to our company, is, you know, J.D. Power does their best U.S. airlines every year. And I believe for the 7th year in a row, we have been number 2. And the airline that has beat us is Alaska Airlines, who are about 1/20th our size, with 1 hub versus our 9, right? And I look at that and I say, and this year the gap has closed to the smallest it has ever been, okay? And the rest of the industry is way behind the 2 of us. If we can, at our scale, carrying 600,000 people a day, 6,000 flights a day, right? Almost 200 million people a year on Delta, more than any other airline, can compete with an airline like Alaska, who have a fine tradition of service. We're scaling an 80,000 workforce to feel pride in what they do, and they're taking care of our customers better than anybody else. And I think companies have to pay attention to that. What is it going to take for a baggage handler to say, I'm going to find that bag and get it onto the right plane? I'm going to get this airplane out on time. I'm going to do all of these things, and the hotels have their own corollary, and the rideshare services have their own corollary. But I think it starts with the employee, and I think we have to have a culture around taking care of our people, and I think more people need to do that.
Excellent. Okay, we have time for a few more questions. Yes?
For Councilmember Krekorian, one of your other gigs is serving on the Energy, Climate Change, and Environmental Justice Committee. What role do you see on driving happening in driving tourism?
It's funny you should ask that, because just before we started the panel, we were just discussing, you know, that very thing, how especially the millennial traveler is looking at those sorts of things about companies that they utilize, not just, you know, the cheapest thing, but how, you know, environmentally or responsible a company may be. So I think that's an important part of the consumer equation, first of all. As far as its impact on, I guess I would say, and maybe this is, actually Mark might have a view on this, about how that affects the hotel business as well, because I'm the outsider, but I'm assuming that that's an important part of consumer choice now when it comes to places that you stay, especially now that the number of choices for that generation is so much broader because of short-term rentals and other things where, you know, that comes into play. But I think that's a question probably more for the professionals in the industry than I. Has that?
Well, it is becoming more and more important all the time. I am very proud to say that we are the only green gold certified hotel in LA, one of only 8 in the United States. To me, that's sad. It's not that hard to do, and I think that more people should do that. More and more consumers expect that. They just expect you to do the right thing to the environment. We've revamped our laundry to save over 1 million gallons of water a year, and through the drought, that was a very big contribution. What that feels like is standing on the top of a building as far as you can see in a 10 square mile radius is that's enough water for all those families in that area. That's what that represents. So it's vital, and it's not that hard to do, especially on new builds. Is it a little more expensive, but the payback and the ROI, but more than anything, it's just the right thing to do. And more consumers are doing that, and there are some government institutions will not book your hotel unless you are certified.
I'll just add to that too. The sanitation department, along with our organization and a certification company called Green Seal, has the Green Lodging Program. And so while it's been slow, we do have more hotels joining that program. I think we're up to about, we're just approaching, 11 hotels now, but with the hotels that have large inventory. I will say that Mark is the poster child. He has been the leader out there. But so I think we're making gains on that. And then the other customer that it's very important in terms of how green is the city, how green is our airport, how green is our convention center, and that of course is the meeting planner, the conference planner, the convention planner. It is now pretty much a standard part of their RFP. So they are pushing us as well.
You know, I would say critically important, our new terminal at LAX, which Gensler is helping us design, is going to be at least LEED silver. And we're very proud of that commitment. It's hard to do that as you get to really big square footage. As you can imagine, it gets expensive, but it's worth the investment. You know, and it goes to small things now. Our recycling program in the air funds a Habitat for Humanity house every year, at least one. In fact, the one we're building in South LA right now is being funded by our recycling program. So there are things that we can do. And then, of course, there are big things, right? At Delta, for the airlines, it's buying fuel-efficient airplanes, and we're spending billions of dollars doing that. So I think there's a narrative here that's very important. I think LA is an amazing example. I remember visiting this city as a kid. I grew up in Hong Kong, and first trip to the United States, guess where we came first? Los Angeles. And I remember in the 80s, we got here, and that smog that LA was so known for was so visible. And I remember moving here 5 years ago, and that smog has gone because of policy changes that this city has done and the state of California has done. So policy, I think, really affects change here. And consumers, certainly in California, we're finding our consumers here want to know, yeah, you're building a terminal. Well, is it going to be environmentally friendly? What are you doing? And do you have recycling programs? What are you putting those things towards? And so, yes, very, very important. We need more of it, not less of it.
Good. Another question over here. I saw a hand. Yes, sir.
You mentioned how the Porter Ranch incident is very local, regional occupancy rates for the market. And I'm just curious to know, now that incident is over, you mentioned that it went down a little bit, which is understandable. How significantly did it go down? And then I'd be interested to know from Ms. Davis how it's impacted your hotel.
The Porter Ranch effect was all over the city of Los Angeles. Maybe not so much at the airport, but it did even extend that far. But the majority, I think about 60% of the relocations were accommodated in Valley hotels. So if you look, I think it's gone down about, both ADR, average daily rate, and the occupancies have gone down about 2 or 3%. But if you take, as I say, take the Porter Ranch out of it, the hotel demand is still at about 2.8%. And then you can speak to it more, but I did look at the occupancy figures for September in the Valley, and they showed significant increases. So.
Well, for us, we were close enough to be affected. There were a lot of families displaced, 6,000, I believe, is the number altogether. We have a very seasoned team, and we basically became a miniature group, a group in itself, because we had, what was it, Cynthia, 120 rooms on 130 in any one day on the books for that. But as we knew the board was not going to accept that excuse for this year, we put a plan in place that realizing that we didn't think a Porter Ranch would be duplicated. Our team got busy and marketed, and we filled that. So for the year, we're still ahead in occupancy. We did not see the trend set back for us, but it's all about managing what happens in the trend in the economy, forecasting it, understanding it, and marketing into the dynamics of that. We took all that we could take. We were asked to take more, but we have commitments to corporate clients. We have commitments to groups that were already contracted. We only have so many beds to fill. We need more. We run at capacity nearly year-round. The park next door continues to hit home runs, and people want to stay here. So for us, we really didn't see a dynamic, it didn't affect us. We're still, we're able to outpace that growth. We are happy to say we outpace the market. We don't see those valleys too much out here in this location. Yes. Wendy?
Hi.
The valley, we always feel involved in, we get our fair share of marketing and all of that, particularly, Universal and Hilton does sometimes, but two other areas I'm connected with the Discovery Cube and the EPAC, and other places in the valley. What's kind of the status of making sure that when it's the Olympics and everything else, the valley gets the attention that we need to ensure it's being advertised and promoted?
And before we respond, for those of you who don't know, if I could just welcome my predecessor in the City Council and our former City Controller, Wendy Gruhl. And Wendy also is not only always a Valley champion, but also is now a board member of the Discovery Cube Museum in the North Valley, which I hope you all will visit because it's terrific. So Patty, do you want to start on that, or should I? On Wendy's
you
question.
go ahead and then.
Well, thank you for the question, Wendy, and obviously it's been something I've been focusing a lot of attention on for tourism generally, because the Valley always gets left out of marketing the city. It's all these cool things happening in the city. Oh, and then there's the San Fernando Valley where 2 million people live, but not a lot going on, out there. And when you look at the, right across the street from here, across the street from this hotel, and I'll bet most people even in this room don't know, is the place where California became an American territory, not territory, but where the Mexican-American War ended across the street from here in the Campo de Cuenca. And almost no one who lives in Los Angeles even knows that, let alone people outside of Los Angeles. When you look at the history that happened in this valley, it's almost entirely neglected when we tell our story. So we've done a lot of we've made a lot of effort to try to recapture some of that, whether it's promoting the Campo, restoring the historic Lankershim Depot as part of our transit system in North Hollywood, a lot of adaptive reuse in North Hollywood and other places to try to capture some of that history. But we also have Universal Studios right here, which, as Mark mentioned, is just a phenomenal driver of tourism for the Valley. The Harry Potter exhibit was game-changing for the San Fernando Valley. You look at the restaurant scene that's going on here along Ventura Boulevard and many other places. There's a lot to talk about in marketing the Valley to tourists. In terms of the Olympics, I don't think even now we have enough venues in the Valley. I would like to see more, but there will be substantial participation by the venues that will be in the Sepulveda Basin and elsewhere, so that people are going to be coming here from all over the world, and that's going to continue to be an impetus. But Patty, maybe you can speak more specifically about marketing the Valley as part of the city's larger strategy.
Yeah, one of the things that's been a game changer for our organization has been the establishment of the Tourism Marketing District, which you may remember. And what that is, basically all the hotels within the city of Los Angeles that are 50 rooms or more charge their guests an assessment of 1.5, which is then passed on to the Tourism Marketing District Corporation. And so that has given us resources to be able to, I think someone mentioned earlier, that we have taken a much deeper dive into the neighborhoods. And those resources have allowed us to do that. So we don't just sell Los Angeles as a brand anymore. We sell it as going into the neighborhoods. We did videos a couple of years ago, and I keep looking at Scott, because Scott sits on our TMD board of directors. But we did about 35 videos of the different neighborhoods. And so, you know, why videos? Well, because content is king in terms of customers these days. We're looking to do another round of those. And certainly, we went to the Valley hotels. We meet with the Valley properties twice every year. And ask them, how do you want us to promote the Valley? How do you want to be positioned? And you know what you mentioned, Ventura Boulevard is one that really runs the length of the Valley. So when we do our Dine LA programs, or we talk about food tourism, which now is mainstream tourism, you know, we definitely are talking about the Valley. And the Topanga Village, that's also become a big attraction. More actually even attracting Chinese to go there to shop. So we're really listening to what, and the conversation is with the attractions. Definitely Universal's a huge partner, and Discovery Cube, and when we're talking about the family market, but we're really trying to have that close cooperation with the hotels to make sure that we are in the markets that they want us to be in as well. So I think the opportunities are big. One of the other areas is the sheer number of hiking trails that are out here, and that whole outdoor activity, because we have certain markets that are really, Australia is one of them, that looks for that, and certainly the millennials, that's high on many of their lists. So I think that we're at a point where we are really being able to incorporate the Valley specific messaging where we weren't able to do that before.
And identifying niches is really important too. I mean, the outdoor lifestyle hiking, yes. The equestrian communities that we have here throughout the Valley, for example. You know, we have a lot of microbreweries that are popping up now, you know, that are, you have beer festivals. There's a lot of little niches like that that you can identify that bring people in, as well as the more macro stuff of Universal Studios and Harry Potter and stuff like that. Oh, great example.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
Well, and the Orange Line is important. Just transportation is so critical in Los Angeles. And that's one of the things we're probably most excited about is the good work that you're doing on the Metro line. I mean, if you look in another, 3 years, the number of lines that are going to be completed, it's going to, for the visitor, that's their way to get around. Yes, Lyft and yes, Uber, but international visitors are used to public transportation. So things like the Orange Line make a big difference.
I'd just like to say one thing. I think we're running out of time, but this is why the gig economy is so successful, is because the millennials aren't willing to wait for us to make those decisions. I mean, you've made the decisions and they're happening, but they wanted it to happen yesterday. That's why Uber and Airbnb are so successful, because they're thinking outside the box. Oh, how can I work around this while the solutions are coming up? And those stories that you're talking about, like going into the community and making those videos, that's an important tool, but where it comes from is important too. Like it should be them speaking the message, not coming from, oh, you know, this is Delta that says that we're doing great. Yeah, well, we all think that Delta says they're gonna be great, but we wanna hear the students or the customers saying, hey, you're doing great, and we're gonna share that story through our own forms of communication. And I think just sponsoring with them would help pass along that message a lot quicker for the companies.
Yes. Interesting you mentioned that, because you want to talk about new filmmakers. We have a program by which we've partnered with New Filmmakers Los Angeles to make little vignettes. Yeah. So all of these, you know, young filmmakers all around the city are telling the story of their Los Angeles. Yeah. It's not coming from any institution. It's coming from people with a phone, you know, who are making short films about Los Angeles. And then we have a film festival that basically shows all these, and each of them through their social networks are spreading this around. So that sort of more organic marketing, I think, it's a really good point, because it speaks to a whole group of people that, you know, I can't speak to.
No, and I to completely underscore that, one of the programs that we have is Tell Your LA Story, and it's to try and reach the visitors themselves, right? The ones who really are experiencing.
Really short stories, like 7 seconds. Right. I mean, that's the attention span. It's 7 seconds. Anything longer than a minute, they're gone.
Yeah, we found personal testimony vital to our industry. TripAdvisor, people have a voice. They used to be able to tell 3 people, now they can tell 30 million people in a flash. But part of the marketing, Wendy, the question is plugging into the valley. It's plugging in, it's showing up. We are a part of the TMD. We had a choice, we don't have to be, but we are. We also collect taxes for the California Visit California, but it's about plugging into those synergies once you invest. The traveler invests for you, they pay the tax, but it's about plugging into those opportunities and showing up and making sure your concierge at each hotel knows about where you are and those different activities that you offer in the valley. So please come see us, let us know, educate us, we'll help you. We have time for one more question. Who would like to be in charge of that last question? Yes, sir.
When you talked about growth, you talked mainly about building out the infrastructure. You didn't talk about labor and talent. So I'm wondering, with the labor market tightening and with the union mindset, are you finding enough talent in the LA?
It's a great question. I will tell you, just in construction alone, as we build this $2 billion terminal at LAX, it is hard to find contractors. And so that's a high-class problem, right? There's so many cranes in this area that's unlike any other American city, actually. It's very exciting. But that is an issue we're finding. The other interesting thing that's happening in the airline industry, and at Delta in particular, over the next 6 years, we're going to be hiring 25,000 people, because so many people in our industry are starting to retire and leave the industry. And in LA, we've already grown from, when I moved here, it was about 3,500 to now 4,100 people. As we grow this terminal and grow our flight schedule well past the 185 daily flights, we're going to add more people. So right now, it's actually harder to become a Delta flight attendant than it is to get into Harvard. Actually, true statement in terms of the statistics, the admit rate. And so there's an enormous amount of demand. We're getting incredible people to join our team. But there are places where we're starting to see, certainly in building and construction, a tightening.
And that's true in the public sector as well, for sure. We'll put a RFP out for a major project and get minimal response because they're all busy. They all can, find work where they don't have to deal with, the challenges of working with government, and that's has an adverse impact on our public contracting, to be sure. And then even when it comes to hiring our permanent workforce, labor is tight, and the advantage of working in the public sector usually has been that you get long-term employment, you can ride out the ups and downs of the economy and so on. People aren't thinking about that now because things are going gangbusters and they don't need to worry about they're not thinking about the downtimes. We have a report every year that the LA Chamber produces. They hire an economic consultant to come analyze the job market, analyze the industry sectors and so on, and report to the council. And we just had his report about a month ago. And the headline of the report was not that Los Angeles is doing a poor job of creating jobs, but Los Angeles is struggling because there isn't enough labor to fill the jobs. And a lot of that was driven by housing costs. And so I suppose it's a good problem to have. It's a better problem than not having enough jobs, but it's a challenge that we for sure have to address, and a lot of that is going to be driven by transit investments and housing.
Definitely a shortage. You will laugh, but some of you, I'm sure, have seen the room service robot in our industry where we can deliver your cheeseburger right to your room, knock on your door, and I will promise you, as long as I'm at this hotel, we will not be doing that. We believe in the human touch. I'd like to thank our panel for a very energetic discussion this morning. Thank you for your expertise. Appreciate your time this morning. Thank you, audience, for your questions. Please do not forget to fill out this. This is important to us. And also enjoy the trade show out front and meet and greet those folks. They have good information for you. Thank you for coming to the panel.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everybody.
Acutely aware of in LA Unified is that our students need to be proficient and prepared post their LAUSD experience. I'm now 23 months on the job, And I'm proud to say in that time, we have already increased our graduation rate to 80%. That's an 8% increase over the last 2 years. But what's more important about that increase and the acknowledgement around that is that we've also included an A through G requirement, and many of you know that is the courses you need for the UC system, right? So really making—
And the CSU.
And the CSU system, correct. Thank you for that partnership there, middle name Francis.
Yes.
Right? We got it. So one of the things we're acutely aware in that is that we increased the expectation, but our students also matched that expectation. So most of our students are now not only thinking about college, but simultaneously also thinking about career. And so as we think about this panel work today, two things that may percolate in your mind is, one is we're really looking for industry certification. So how do we make sure that our students have a Microsoft certification, or we've started a new partnership with Amazon, et cetera, to really make sure that our students have both college and career simultaneously. And we're finding that most of our students, that's how they're actually going through that college experience. So we have a lot of great programs that we could talk about today, such as linked learning and how we provide mentorships and intern opportunities, and we work very closely with our Chamber of Commerce. And then also thinking about how we create like schools within schools. And I think in the past there's kind of been this stigma around career education that it's like this vocational, you're either one or the other. And the messaging is really about both and. It's the same type of conversation you hear when you think about language. Is it English only or being multilingual? You want multiple languages, right? Especially in this global economy. So I'd like to encourage us today to really think about some both and conversations around college and career as we think about the life plans and the future employees and leaders in these great cities in our basin.
Very good. Thank you so much. Adrian, would you like to comment?
Thank you very much, Diane. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I've had the opportunity to be with in the tech industry, and in particular in Microsoft the last 23 years. And that seems like a long time, but it feels like 5 generations of technology from the time that I joined the company. And there are a number of things that I've noticed, and I think that's something that we probably should discuss today. One is, what is career in technology mean? And very often it is, I think sometimes misunderstood as you got to be good in math only. We also want the critical thinkers. Mm-hmm. We've got about 5,000 job openings at any one time, and this, if you look for the last 2, 3, 4 years, that number is quite consistent. We've not made a dent in that number. And if we look at our partner ecosystem, so many of you have companies, you use Microsoft servers, and databases are servers, are Microsoft. And if we look at that ecosystem, there are probably between 30 and 50,000 open jobs, and they have difficulty filling them. So if we look at what these jobs are, it's not all computer scientists. And that's sometimes the misunderstanding about STEM. That if you go into STEM, it's about coding morning to night, and it's not fun. Even my kids sort of had that impression, you know. Dad, you go in and you're in front of a computer every day, right? And that's not the case. They're kind of surprised that, you know, it involves working with people. The computer and STEM is a tool, it's a means to an end, not the end itself, but sometimes it's misunderstood as the end itself. So many times we find that amongst our partner ecosystem, there are individuals who never went to college. You don't need to go to college to be a systems administrator. You don't need to go to college to be a network administrator. You need the experience and you need the exposure. And when we look at STEM, we think, because we've struggled with this for so many years, we've come to the realization that STEM cannot be an appendage. It should be integrated as part and parcel of modern society. We're data rich, but information poor. that's the issue we have today. We've got a lot of data. And if you look at the trajectory of data that's being stored on your machines, your local machines, and of course, if you got a mobile phone and you're storing it in the cloud, it is exponential. But the amount of information coming back to us to make decisions has not grown exponentially. And that's where we see opportunities. I won't drag it too much because I think we'll have a lot of opportunity to go into some of these details. I want to turn it over to Nicole.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So my name is Nicole Rice. I am one of several members, part of our government relations team that represents the manufacturing industry here in California, which is approximately 30,000 plus companies in California that employ about 1.3 million Californians, and we have an economic activity that we generate that's over $230 billion. So a significant industry, 12% of the companies that are represented here in California. So we have a pretty significant footprint in California that we like to grow and expand. We also see ourselves as the industry of the middle class. We offer middle class job opportunities, career pathways, upward mobility, providing individuals who can come in with something less than a 4-year degree and be able to make, on average, our wages are about $85,000, $87,000 a year. So that's a very solid lifestyle. Manufacturing, I will say, has an image problem. We have a marketing and advertising challenge, and that is that we are not what many of you might remember from the 1950s with the smokestacks and the polluters. We are advanced manufacturing. We are growing and responding to a global industry and a global marketplace that is demanding more efficiency, more energy efficiency, better and more environmentally sound policies, and also demanding from us, from the consumer perspective, to ensure that we are turning over things quickly and in a very dynamic way in order to address the needs of consumers, whether that is individuals, whether it is our public sector partners, or whether it's other industries in general, private sector industries. So as a result, we continue to have a skills gap because basically individuals don't see our industry as a career path. So we find it very difficult to find individuals who are interested into coming into manufacturing. They don't think that it's going to be interesting or engaging or challenging. But in actuality, we're looking for people who have very strong interpersonal skills, who are mechanically and technologically have aptitudes in those different areas. And we're also looking for people who want to be creative and innovative because we're, as I said before, we're responding to a global marketplace that is requiring that. So, so there is an opportunity here for both the businesses and the individuals who are interested in acquiring those skills and that training to be able to have a fruitful career opportunity in our industry. And so we continue to tell that story, that there are jobs available here, that there are good jobs available here, and that only with a little bit of training and partnership with our educational stakeholders that we'll be able to hopefully overcome the skills gap that we're experiencing. Thank you.
Very good. Paul?
Thank you. So at California Lutheran University, we're obviously engaged in the process of education, but education for the workforce as well as for students' whole life. So that may include graduate school, it may include career entry, it may include work with volunteer agencies like the Peace Corps and various others. So part of what we try to do is help students, tagline says, discover and live their purpose. So understanding what it is, what their unique skills are, what their passions are, and how hopefully those two align either in a career kind of role where they can live out their purpose in life, managing people, accomplishing a goal, or as a volunteer where their career essentially funds their purpose through their volunteer work. So we try to do that through a number of different paths. We are actively involved in the entrepreneurship community, where we have offered a minor in entrepreneurship to students in any major. Every discipline has the opportunity to solve problems, to create businesses, to create organizations that can make those solutions for problems, sometimes involving manufacturing. We try to get students into experiential learning opportunities, visiting manufacturing plants, data centers, operational settings, to get a sense of what, quote unquote, the real world is like. I try to avoid use of that term with my students because they are in the real world, but it's a different part of the real world that they will go into when they're in a workplace. We use study abroad and travel seminars as another opportunity to get students exposed to another part of the world and to be more prepared to be engaged in what is likely to be a global business. Interacting with folks from, even locally, from other cultures, from other languages, interacting with partners around the world. I have my students working on a project where they're working in a team project, but I've asked them to use interaction technologies that assume they are not anywhere near one another. Video conferencing, Google Documents, things like that, to ensure that they're walking into the workforce with some understanding of how to manage a meeting that takes place in that kind of a setting. So we're hopefully working toward creating and helping our students create the knowledge base, the skill sets to be effective entry-level workers and to perhaps be entrepreneurs and create their own organizations as well.
Very good. I'm going to address this next question to Dr. Gipson, but please, for the other panelists, if you want, when she's finished making her points, if you have anything to add on this point too, please do so. So every year, LAUSD is graduating more and more students, and this is a two-parter. Are these students ready to enter the workforce? And what programs is the district implementing to ensure that students are not only college prepared, but also career ready when they receive their high school diploma?
Thank you. Well, we've, under the leadership of Dr. King, we've really been doing a lot of work around expanding pathways based on student interest and also on what the career sectors are that we need to prepare students for. So right now we have 16 different pathways with our career technology education programs and our career tech ed. And one of the things that we do, as I mentioned earlier, is we kind of create these schools within schools, and the students will have courses that not only take as you said earlier, like the real world experiences, but also those academic experiences, and really try to mesh them together so it really does make sense. And these efforts result in a capstone experience where they actually have a portfolio, and they will have folks that work in those jobs and from that industry that may in fact even be their future employer, and they defend their work and how it makes sense. And so when you see these powerful experiences, you know that it's not just about the fact that they went through this course sequence, but they've really internalized it and are prepared for the workforce. Also, our linked learning pathways, we work very closely. We have a relationship with the LA Chamber of Commerce and the LA Compact and across the basin. And what we've done is really partnered up. Every single linked learning school has a relationship with not only getting state funding, but also local support. So you will walk into these schools nowadays and you will see 3D anatomy labs. And students also preparing to become a dental hygienist right now while they're in high school, and then they have a relationship, let's say with USC, where they're working side by side with a dentist. So these are real experiences for our students. I know I was a middle school principal. Anybody raised a middle school child? Anybody ever been a middle school student, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
So I think about my middle school students and the opportunities that they need. And the career conversation isn't about high school. And guess what? It's not about middle school, but what we share with folks is it's really about the ABCs through the A through Gs, right? It's really about making sure that we have a strong foundation for our students. And a lot of times when you go out there and you ask students, what do you want to be when you grow up? What are the traditional answers you usually hear a lot of times? Teacher, lawyer, doctor. we are shattering that, and we've introduced, for example, some new software. A company called Naviance has partnered up with us, where students go and they think about, what are my interests, what are those skills, what do I need to learn and be able to do? And from an early age, really helping students think about their dispositions that they need to have to be ready for a new workforce and an ever-changing world. We heard earlier our millennials are constantly changing their careers, so how do we create, some folks call them the soft skills, I actually refer to them as the hard skills, their creativity, the community, the collaboration efforts that we really need for our students. So we're giving some really practical pieces. We're doing a lot of work around the soft skills, as some folks might say, but it's really about making sure that they have those 21st century workforce skills. And one of the things that's also very unique to LAUSD, we were the first district in the world to adopt the ISTE standards, which is the International Society for Technology Education. And I'd like to share with you a little bit about that, because it will also shift your thinking about how you're thinking about our classrooms right now. So there was this mindset that if I give you a tool, like I give you a tablet or I give you a computer, like suddenly you have technology education, right? But really it's about a focus on what do you want students to know instructionally, and what are the tools that they can leverage to help them with that end goal. So when we adopted these ISTE standards, it was really about helping our students know, how can you be a global collaborator? How do you engage students in computational thinking? How do you make sure that they are producers, not just consumers of information? And so if you think about that, that's a very different mindset than how do I touch the glass? Or what's the traditional keyboarding? Or I get to work with some hardware, but I don't get to do all the rigorous cognitive work around that. And then our challenge around that is, as we set up that expectation and we look to our workforce, we find that most teachers are not going into the computer sciences. They are not getting certificates and credentials in those areas. So that leaves us nationwide with about 4% of our students, while they're still in high school, going into computer sciences. And so that in and of itself is a huge gap that we're looking to close. We're writing some big grants and also working with UCLA with Dr. Jane Margolis to really think about how do we make sure we can elevate more and more opportunities for our students in this field, and also especially our young girls and men of color. So we're really focusing in on our grant work and our outreach to our community members to say, come mentor, come lead, here are different ways you can do it, whether it's career tech ed, linked learning, or even getting into those primary grade levels with our students to help support them. And then lastly, I would just say, how many of you have heard about our adult education programs in LA Unified? It's kind of the secret that we have to make sure the world knows about. So we have a whole division devoted to helping our adults, which quite frankly might be the future employees that you want, or the parents of our students. And we've got incredible certification programs for them, and we partner up with our community colleges in those efforts. So there's really a wealth of resources that I encourage you to unpack, that start with our earliest learners, their families, all the way to adult education in LA. And whether it's getting your diploma or a certification or an industry certification, LA Unified can help you with that.
Very good. I know that when students come into the CSU, and on our campus in particular, we some of our students are not as prepared for math. Math is a big, huge challenge, particularly college algebra, and so we're working on, we've partnered, we're part of the Compact, trying to work with LAUSD and teachers, as well as at our end, to try and improve the opportunities that students have to be successful at math, because it's a huge challenge for so many students. Anybody want to add something here before we move on?
If I may add to that, another program that operates probably in many universities is the Upward Bound program, aimed at encouraging students to think about a college education opportunity, whether that's a community college or a four-year college, and gets them into college classrooms with college instructors during the summer of their junior year, I believe, so they're thinking about that before the application process. It's been a really effective tool for helping students think about what they could actually do and not just assume that's something that somebody else does. To your point about women, certainly it's a critical shortage of women in the technology workforce. I work with an organization called the National Center for Women in Technology, whose focus is totally on how do you promote computer science and technical education, starting at the elementary school level and working all the way up, so that the girls are thinking early on about what their capacity is and not assuming that's something the boys do.
Well, since you started, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question, and that is, what are the existing skill gaps, Dr. Witman, in the workforce pipeline? And how are institutions of higher education trying to fill those gaps?
That's a broad question.
Yes.
So there are probably several. One of the things that we are, I was just talking to a math colleague, he talked about teaching students skills in attacking problems, which was an interesting phraseology for a math professor. I've heard problem solving, problem resolution, but I've never heard somebody talk about attacking problems. And so helping students think about ways of solving problems that are aggressively focused on defining the problem, finding alternative solutions, evaluating those potential solutions in a thoughtful and data-centric, information-centric kind of way, and then looking at how to put those solutions into place, and recognizing that solving a problem doesn't do anything until you get the organization to take that task on and actually execute it. So there's the soft skills of persuasion and organizational skills. So there's a whole collection of skills that maybe are part of a particular discipline, but for most disciplines, the soft skills are not a big part of what we try to teach. So helping students understand how to communicate well verbally, in writing, before their peers, before their superiors in an organization, all of those kinds of skills, the ways to deliver information in a way that's going to be appropriately received, all of those are key skills that I think probably are not as universally delivered as they should be.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things we try to do with a broad core educational component is to deal with some of those things, but it's often in a more general sense, a writing course about literature, which helps you be a good writer, but it doesn't necessarily help you persuade somebody about how to solve a particular manufacturing problem.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Thank you.
If I could,
Yes.
I'd like to add to that. So in manufacturing, I'm going to readjust myself here. There's a bar there. So obviously the skill sets that we're looking for are, technical in nature, and information technology as well, because as manufacturing becomes more advanced, we're looking for students who understand how to program, how to code, how to troubleshoot those machines and the code input that they're receiving, a concept that I like to call digital literacy, where you're understanding what's behind the technology and the how and why, and not just the use of it, as was discussed before. But I also want to share with you that the soft skills, those interpersonal skills, are becoming more and more of a barrier to bringing in candidates to our facilities. Manufacturers, because this skill gap currently exists, and again, with great work like LAUSD and other school districts are doing throughout the state, we're hoping to overcome that challenge. But manufacturers are starting to take on more and more training, cross-training their incumbent workers, and also identifying candidates with aptitudes that they can bring in and do basic training for their particular facilities. However, as I said, it's those interpersonal skills that are now becoming even more of a barrier. And if I could briefly share, so there was California Steel Industries, one of our member companies down here in Southern California in Fontana. They are very involved on this skills gap issue and workforce and training the next generation of manufacturing workers. And one of their employees is also part of an HR professional group for logistics and distribution, as well as manufacturing. And so they recently did an informal survey about what are the barriers that you as HR professionals are seeing in these, manufacturing related sub-industries. And just a quick sampling, here are some of the responses. That the candidates who are coming in for interviews, they've never done anything manual. So again, that's a technical thing, like working on a car, mowing a lawn, putting together IKEA furniture. And I don't do that very well myself, but apparently it shows an aptitude that you can, as a foundation that you can build on for training. So, from that, again, no mechanical aptitude, poor math skills, as we've heard, and problem solving as well. Also, candidates, and these are kind of the interpersonal skills, they don't show up for interviews on time, if at all.
Yikes.
And if they don't show up, they don't call, they don't email, they don't text that they're not going to show up. They just don't materialize. During the interviews, they don't have good kind of interaction skills, so they don't really make eye contact or shake hands. They can't give an elevator speech really well about themselves, their skill set, why they're interested in the position. And then they use casual communication with the interviewer, like, hey dude and bro. If they are hired on the job, they have difficulty working an entire 8-hour day and staying on task or being productive. They don't work well with other employees who have different perspectives. They don't manage disappointment or criticism well. And they often take offense when you try to give direction about how to perform the job correctly. So it's kind of this know-it-all mentality. So that's just a sampling. I mean, this was a huge list, and they recently gave this discussion to a group of manufacturers, and I was shocked about the nods of the heads that I got in the room, that I could see in the room from where I was sitting from. So this really seems to be a huge problem. So in addition to the technical skills, we're really going to have to ensure that students are prepared for the world of work.
Yes.
To have that professional demeanor and attitude when going into a place of work and making the distinction between our education experience and what is expected of you as an employee.
Very good. That's quite depressing.
It was.
But actually, as an educator, I would add that that is our challenge. And we have a large number of first-generation students, and so there are some additional support and educational needs because they might not have been exposed to some of these situations. So I think that's a good reminder to all of us that those soft skills are terribly, terribly important as well. So thank you for that. So Adrian, how can businesses partner with K through 12 and colleges and universities to help shape curricula for current and future workforce needs in the computer science and technology sector?
Sure, thank you. That's a very good question. A few years ago, you might have heard about a program called Minecraft that took the world by storm. And you have got 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds who are literally putting together what they call Minecraft worlds. And so this is where Microsoft, I think, saw an opportunity to attempt to integrate a tool that has captured the attention of students at a very, very young age. And one of the projects that we've got in the company today is to help or energize K-12 educators to build curriculum for Minecraft. As an example, we were having a conversation about a few months ago when students learn about the pyramids. That's an example of where you could build a Minecraft world of pyramids, and actually if you go to YouTube today, you'd see how students have built these Minecraft worlds. So a topic like that can end up being an opportunity for collaboration, an opportunity for, and within the Minecraft, and it's called Minecraft for Education, within that program, it also has models for allowing students to write code for their own avatars. So not only do you see the pyramids in Egypt being created, but they put their own avatar as to how those pyramids might have been built, as an example. So that's just an example, because it's such an important component of our industry that if Microsoft doesn't take steps today, we realize that in the next 10, 15 years, we're not going to have enough talent to be competitive globally. We're in a global industry.
Right.
And it's easy enough for somebody else to become the leaders in a particular area. So having that talent and that we can, you know, incorporate into our business is very, very important. I think there are, just like I was, you know, had alluded, not all computer jobs involve computer science. If we take an example of, let's say you're modeling a student information system or your financial system, this doesn't require a computer science degree. It requires some understanding of how records are kept, and maybe some financial accounting to go along with it, but that can be learned on the job. I think potentially working on curriculum that helps ground students early with that computational thinking that you mentioned, Dr. Gipson, where it's part and parcel of their lives. A month ago, I was in Hawaii, and I was talking to a school, and they are starting up what they call a Distinguished Educator Series. And the first distinguished educator was going to be Dr. Ken Kaneshiro. He's a specialist in Hawaiian insects. And particularly, he's a specialist in the sexual behavior of Hawaiian insects. Apparently, Hawaii has the highest diversity of the Drosophilus fly, which is actually the common fruit fly. Because of the diversity of the flora and fauna in Hawaii, for some reason, you've got these insects who have adapted in all kinds of ways, different colors, different lengths to reach food, because food is abundant. And so he spent his time, he's got a 40-year career studying these insects, spent all this time looking at their adaptation. When we introduced this concept to the classroom, the kids just, those listening to it, they just got excited. The possibility of learning, even you don't have to wait till high school to learn about this. You tell them about, how these insects are mating, you get the attention of a third grader. Right? And then and how they're adapting to reach different types of, whether it's a papaya or some other tropical type fruit. And not only that, many of these insects are in their own gardens. So immediately you have students who are exposed to statistics at a very, very young age, because ask them to count what they see. Counting is the starting point of statistics. Count what they see, and if you look at your plot of land, and by that population, they become automatic citizen scientists. So that's another area that we are particularly interested in, and I hope other businesses also, join us with this concept of having citizen scientists, and we're happy to provide support there.
Very good. It reminds me of the famous sex researcher, Dr. Kinsey.
Yes.
He started out as an entomologist studying fruit flies. So, interesting. So you talked about not necessarily needing computer science majors. What would you be looking for at Microsoft for skills and or type of degree or study, or does it matter? Would a liberal arts major satisfy you?
Absolutely. We need liberal arts majors.
Yes.
We need lots of them. And especially when designing products. And this may not be so apparent when individuals come for the interviews. One of the key things we look for is empathy. Because products are designed for people. And without that empathy, both from an engineering standpoint and from the product designers, what we find is products are designed for a particular kind of skill or a particular kind of mindset. But that's not what products are today. If you look at students or the young people or millennials using their mobile phones, those products need to be usable. And the only way we can get our products to be used more and more, and not to have a specialized degree, because the products change so often. Right. These days the cycles are more like 6 and 12 months. For them to go to training to learn how to use these products and the new innovations is something that we cannot afford. And as such, that being able to understand how a human being will interact with that interface. And sometimes we, looking at them interacting and say, oh yeah, it's user training. That's not a valid answer. If the user doesn't understand it, we have not done our jobs. So, these are some of the things that we try to incorporate and try to look for in the candidates that are coming in today.
Very good.
If I can add to that,
yes.
The original question looked at the question of how businesses and educational institutions can partner, and to the extent that advisory councils or senior level relationships between the institutions might take place, that would be, to me, a very valuable thing. We're doing that with our hospitality management degree program, which is in flight, with our sports management program. We'll have to work on the engineering of tables, perhaps Kia. Hope everybody's okay.
Not my members.
So being able to
everyone's all right.
To get feedback from folks in the industry about the curriculum and about what they're seeing from recent grads. Part of the challenge, as you say, in technology is that the industry changes rapidly. So if you're looking at a computer scientist training to teach them programming, teaching them a specific language is probably not the most optimum thing for industry. We really want to teach them how to learn, how to attack new problems, how to figure out a new set of technologies, because what they learn in their junior year of college may or may not be in the market or maybe a dying market 2 or 3 years down the line. So we really want to work with industry to figure out how to design the curriculum, how to design individual courses to be as effective as possible for that student's long-term career.
Very good. So Nicole, one last question, and then I'm going to give a broader question for everyone to address. But given the increased competition from international markets and technological innovations, how can we ensure that California has consistent and stable job opportunities for our manufacturing industry?
Wow, that's a large question. I think there's a lot of different factors. I mean, in this discussion, we're really focusing on how to educate and train up our 21st century workforce. But I think ensuring job opportunities might be a larger question for, several probably breakout discussions that are happening now. I'll stick with just the education component of that. See how I pivot? To address that, one of the things that CMTA, the association that I'm with, we're involved in a lot of different discussions on this front. So we're looking at K through 12 opportunities. We're looking at higher ed opportunities. We are part of a coalition called Get Real, which stands for Relevance in Education and Learning, and we deal with ensuring that there is stable and permanent and ongoing career tech education training opportunities at the K through 12 level. We're also involved with a coalition called the EDGE Coalition, which involves not only industry and labor, which Get Real does as well, but it's also educators and social justice groups and a variety of different stakeholders in this realm looking at community colleges, CSUs, and UC opportunities. So from industry, when they're looking out kind of at the education world, they want to see a couple of things. They're looking for pipelines that are active, that are growing, that are stable, and that reflect the alignment with their needs. And so they're looking for certain skill sets, and they're looking to see that funding is consistent, that the policymakers have made this a priority, and that the funding and the training for teachers and for their education is going forth. And so when doing that and seeing a robust pipeline, then because this is such a priority issue for us, one of the top 5 issues really is the workforce for manufacturing in California. Then they can see a place where they feel that they can invest, because we're looking for longevity. When manufacturers, and I would submit, various different industries in the economy, when we're planning, our planning horizon isn't 2 or 3 years. It's 8 years at minimum. So we need to be able to see some longevity in all the policies that affect our ability to be competitive, because that is what it's really all about. We are in a global marketplace where our competitor is not on the street corner across the street. They're on a street corner, but they're on a street corner in Dubai. So we have to make sure that our competitiveness is healthy to be able to continue to be a thriving industry and a job opportunity in California. So when looking at the workforce, we want to have partnerships. I have companies, and this kind of addresses the other question that was said about how we can engage. I think manufacturers are looking for long-term, consistent engagement with their education partners and stakeholders. And I know dealing in the policy and budget area that this is sometimes difficult, because funding is really important to make sure that these programs are consistent, because absent the funding, there aren't any other drivers in the education policy to undergird career tech education. It's not really a part of the A through G requirements. Even though more and more courses are becoming A through G eligible, it's not part of that education code. It's also not part of the accountability structure. We can easily determine when a student is college ready, not so easily determine when they're career ready. So funding is really the only policy mechanism that's keeping these programs alive. So because the funding has ebbed and flowed and been one-offs for, gosh, probably over 7 to 10 years in California policy, in an area where we used to excel nationally about training our workforce, it's been difficult for programs to stay online, which makes it difficult for them to be able to go out and find industry partners and develop relationships, and therefore have long-term relationships where we can start informing the creation and development of curriculum. There's a lot of training, a lot of funding programs that even though they have been temporary, they have created some momentum, and we're hoping in Sacramento to keep that momentum going. And one of the things it has created is these regional collaboratives. So I always encourage educators, and actually my companies, to really get involved in those conversations. But I think part of the hindrance in doing that for the companies is they need renewed faith in the education system, because a lot of them have felt that the much needed programs have been taken offline for reasons and circumstances that are outside a host of individuals' control, but nevertheless it has created a larger problem. And so what they can do in-house, they try to do, but they're turning and looking inward. And so therefore there's frustration and disconnect between the two systems that need a relationship in order for the students to be able to have the right opportunities.
So Nicole, if I could be so bold.
Uh-oh.
I love disturbing the system, throwing that little bit of We have a lot of policymakers here today, don't we? And I'm just wondering, you know, this week they passed AB 19, looking at a college promise and ensuring that all of our students know that there's a full-time seat for them. I'm wondering what would happen if we had a career promise in the state of California that gave us a funding stream to make sure that those unique partnerships and pathways that are being built actually can continue to flourish for our students. So I challenge our system to be bold.
I like that. Very good.
Career promise.
Yes.
Career promise.
So this is for everyone, please. We hear every day about the rapid rate of innovation and changes in technology and how fast things are happening and change. And we know that those of us who are trying to prepare our graduates for the future careers and workforce, that we're trying to prepare them for jobs that don't even exist yet. So to all of you, please, how can we account for the planning? Like, how do we do that, actually? How do we prepare for jobs that don't exist in the future, from your perspective? How do we really get our workforce and our career graduates ready for a future we don't know what the future lies, even though we suspect robots may have something to do with it? Anybody?
Well, I'll leap into the fray and take a shot at that. So the starting point for that, for us, is a broad, fundamental set of educational requirements, so the students understand how to think from a historical point of view, from a literature point of view, from a mathematical, scientific points of view, so that they can think about problems from a variety of different perspectives. So that when a new technology comes available, a new way of working, a new competitor in another part of the world comes online, they can think about how to deal with that competitor, how to deal with that new opportunity in ways that are more than just, what have I been trained for, and this is going to ruin my job prospects, so I need to go somewhere else and continue doing what I was doing. So we need to have students that are thinking of themselves as career creatures that will evolve over time, and be able to adjust their thinking and be willing to go get retraining, to train themselves, to constantly be learning. I'll take students to Europe this winter for a business seminar, and one of the things I tell them is, from the moment you get on the plane at LAX, it's a learning experience. Watch the people around you. Listen to what they have to say. Ask them questions. We're going to be landing in London in the middle of Brexit. We'll be in Europe in the middle of all the activities going on there, the activity in Spain. So there's all sorts of things that are going on that will affect the business world that are going to change fundamentally how Europe does business. And our students should be thinking about, what does that mean for them, for their companies. So getting students to think broadly about how their career fits into the world and how they need to be prepared to learn about that changed environment on a daily basis is really the fundamental thing I ask them to think about.
Very good, thank you. Nicole, any response?
Yeah, so I think first of all, so even though we don't know what's on the next technology horizon, I think by the fact that we're having this conversation, we at least admit that there are things now that we could make sure that we excel in as it relates to training. So let's just make sure we build a strong foundation, because a lot of students who are going to be coming out of education and going into the world of work, they're going to need a basic foundation. I think that basic foundation is really not going to change as much as when you start digging into the details and the specialized skills. So a basic foundation, and make sure that we excel in that, and that will differ for each industry. Make sure we excel in that training today, I think will help for the future. Secondly, I think we need to realize that the industry does know. Now, we might not know a week, or, okay, so let me be more realistic. So we might not know 6 to 8 months in front as educators or policymakers. Industry probably knows a little further in front of that, maybe 24, 26 months, I'm going to say, and let me caveat that with the fact that I am in policy, so I am not in industry. But my guys, because of their horizon patterns, or their planning horizon patterns, and also their competitiveness, they see trends a lot faster than the consumer does. So they will start planning in-house for that. And so there will be more opportunities for incumbent training. So we need to make sure that that structure, that education structure, is sound. So that involves the community colleges, so that we can send our existing workforce to a place for learning. That also involves the private sector educators and the training that they're doing. It also will involve our workforce development system. That's a whole nother system that partners with education, but they look for those those populations that have barriers to employment. So we can easily bring those individuals in. There's a lot of cross-training that goes on in my industry because we're running more efficiently, which means a smaller workforce. There's more automation for a lot of different reasons to be more efficient and effective in what we do for worker safety as well. So as automation happens, we're going to probably have less workers, but more highly skilled and trained workers. So again, those are individuals who are going to go back into the education system. So it needs to be ready to receive. As well as CSUs do a great job in that type of training. And then there's a role for the UCs. They need to figure out exactly where they want to be in kind of this applied learning process. And then lastly, I think we need to help our students, although I believe millennials are already seeing this because they're changing jobs so rapidly, that they need to be in a constant state of learning. And so they need to understand that they're going to be lifelong learners. And things are going to change, and so they're going to need to adapt, and they're going to need to be able not only just to wait for their employers to help them figure that out, but also take a little bit of independence on their own and determine when they need to come in and out of those off ramps and on ramps with the education system in the industry, so that they can remain competitive in themselves and be able to experience that kind of career fulfillment and mobility that they're looking for.
Adrian, would you add anything?
Sure. Yes. In our industry, we find that anyone who's coming in today, whether it's in our company or any other technology company, they've got to have a mindset, a problem solver's mindset. And that's something that's, it's sometimes a shock to them when they come in, because a 4.0 student may not have a problem solver's mindset. They're great at, doing the assessments. They did really well in school. But when it came to solving problems, there were so many other things that needed to be taken into consideration. As an example, asking the right question and understanding what the end goal is. That doesn't always translate so easily into an assessment. So I think that there might be an opportunity to, and education has talked about this for a long, long time, this transition to more of a competency-based assessment model versus the traditional assessments that we know and love. Maybe that will help, but that's, for us, failure has dramatic consequences for our industry.
Okay. Francis, any addition? And then we're going to open it up for others to comment or question.
So when I was superintendent, I always told people, I want you to think about the 4 Ps. Your purpose, how we support pathways, plus personalization to help our students be prepared. And just a little bit around what I mean by that. When we know our purpose, our why, helping our students do that. We still struggle with that as adults, right? So how do I know how to be self-directed? How do I know how to have a growth mindset in my work and not be fixed in my thinking? How do I know how to attack those problems, as you said? How do I have empathy? And so really making sure that I understand my purpose and that we honor not only the community voice, but our students' voice, so we learn from them, because we know these youngsters have a very strong voice. The question is, are we listening to it? And then as we think about the pathways, one of the things that we're so proud of in LAUSD is we have had a huge expansion, not only from preschool but to grade 20, to really think about the articulation. So you might have heard about a thing like unified enrollment. Can you go online and find magnet schools or different programs that really fix that niche that a student is just passionate about and wants to continue learning? Then you think about personalization. Our students are very comfortable with Facebook, and that's a very generic example. There's so many more, right? But how do we take that and then put it in the classroom? So we have like a learning management system. So do you have personalized playlists that help you think about how you differentiate learning and extend the learning and expand the learning globally? So really those shifts around personalization, not only with the tools, but the mindsets of our teachers. And when all of that comes together for this preparedness, we really want to think about college, career, and life plan, not an either or, but all of this coming together. And so that really comes together with this concept of a graduate learner profile. We want to make sure our students are adaptive, that they have this growth mindset, that they're global collaborators. And those are things that live side by side with a dramatic shift in the academic landscape of this nation. You know, with the Common Core standards, anybody help somebody with Common Core math at home recently, right? That is very different than how we grew up, right? And then you look at the next generation science standards and putting in engineering standards. And while everybody's talking about STEM, here's what I share. STEM is the new core instruction, right? It's really taking those standards and helping students know how to be problem solvers, to be critical thinkers, collaborators. And I think when we pull all of those resources together with those new mindsets, we're really creating a workforce that will lead locally and nationally and globally. Thank you.
Very good. Questions from our participants here?
This is called wait time in the classroom.
And so that partnership, I think, is very, very critical in our landscape today. So it's not an easy answer, but I think it's an answer. It's a question we should ask, keep asking ourselves. And as an organization, we're keen to participate in.
And if I could add, please, I think it's also the responsibility of those in higher education to have these kinds of conversations and discussions and to take back what we learn and to implement. And we're the educators for our students, and I think we have a responsibility there too. Nicole, did you have anything to add?
Yes. So I'm trying to figure out where to start here. From CMTA's perspective, we see our role in this conversation is understanding who all the players are and the direction that the policy is going, and trying to direct those policy discussions so that they include the needs of the manufacturing industry. We rely heavily on the conversations that are happening regionally. And we have worked from a policy perspective to really create and incentivize regional conversations, because California is just too big to be able to try to drive this from the state down, from a state level down. We want the policy to create the playing field, but the conversations need to happen regionally. Because while some states on the East Coast might have 2 subsections of manufacturing, and then they can do it really well, and then people ask me, well, why is it happening really well over there? And I said, okay, they're not even, this is a state that's not even as big as, Sacramento region, let alone larger parts of the state. So we here have an extremely diverse manufacturing industry, and we want to keep that. It's not a bad thing or a negative thing, but the conversations at the regional level happen better and they're more productive because those companies know, and those economic development corporations know where the job trends are going, and therefore they can help inform the education partners. So my manufacturers, we have multiple industry groups, collaborations that happen throughout the state. I will admit some regions do it better than others because the partnerships and relationships have been there, but they're always willing to have those conversations. The challenge is that they don't always know who to talk to. As I said earlier, the 2 systems don't talk well to each other. We have that problem in Sacramento. Policymakers want to sit down and have discussions, and that's what my members pay me for. They don't want to have 9-month conversations, because frankly, they can't wait that long. So I always try to help public sector and educators understand, for industry, it's a return on the investment, and they will make that assessment really fast. And if they call someone and don't get a call back, or are transferred to 4 different people in 3 or 4 different public entities, they will immediately give up. They will come to us. They will try to find incumbent training dollars. We will provide that, and they will do it in-house. So the conversations are happening. They're slow going, but I'm encouraging my members, have faith again in the system. Get back, get engaged. We'll help you find productive conversations. And then I tell those they're talking with, please think about the return on the investment. They're not going to come and sit in an hour with you, sit in a room with you for 2 hours every week with no end game or outcome that is planned to occur. So we need to have, some real measurable outcomes that are going to happen in order to keep them engaged, and they want to be engaged.
Very good. Yes. Tim?
So to pick up on that, we have seen compressed cycle times. The advent of artificial intelligence and robotics is going to displace huge portions of our workforce, both trades and professionals. And so I think it's this compressed cycle time that ultimately drives the educational model to adapt more quickly as well. So the question is, does the present model have the capacity to match the cycle times through things like advisory panels or regional collaborations, or should we look for more radical considerations? Are there models out there that seem better suited to this problem today?
Once again, I'll leap into the fray. Let's see what happens.
Go ahead.
So you're absolutely right that there are opportunities for perhaps more radical approaches. The traditional 4-year educational process, by definition, is a relatively long cycle time. There are universities, the extension programs in many universities are offering individual courses, 2 or 3 or 4 course bundles of certificates, badges, and these are offered both at the university level as well as by private training organizations that offer specific training in how to manage around particular new technologies, new approaches to business. So robotics is one of those that we've started to integrate into the curriculum for the School of Management, looking across the curriculum at what are the impacts. So part of that is in technology where I teach, but part of it's in human resources and organizational behavior, and looking at, okay, you're looking at your organization down the line, 2 years, there's gonna be a bunch of robots in your factory and a bunch less in the way of humans. What's going to happen for the humans that stay in the factory? What are the rest of those humans going to be able to do? And starting to think about that both as a way of recognizing that you may not be competitive without that. So putting your head in the sand and saying, no, I'm going to stay in all manual manufacturing organization may not be a viable option. And recognizing you have an obligation to your workers to make sure they're safe and to do the best you can to help develop their careers so that they can be as effective and as valuable to the organization as possible. So I don't know what the right answer to that is, but I think it's a combination of recognizing the impacts of major shifts like that, AI and robotics being one of those, and applying those to existing curricula, but also looking at how do we develop bundles of small courses that are appropriate for particular things. Now, the private training industry at $5,000 a week has lots of opportunity to do that. That may not be the most cost-effective model for large numbers of people. So we'll have to figure out how to do that in a way that's more economical, but is effective. Just putting a screen in front of somebody and asking them to watch a video is probably not the most effective way of doing that.
If I could just jump in there for a minute, we're sort of dancing around the notion of competency-based training because which means we have to move away from time in a seat or at a computer or whatever, or in higher education, the sacred tablet of the unit, the credit hour. And what does that mean exactly? And so, you know, this is nothing new, competency-based education, but it is something that is increasingly difficult to follow through with, because everyone says this is the most innovative thing we can do, is really to go toward competency-based education. And then very recently, the Department of Education has fined Western Governors University for their very well-respected and highly awarded competency-based education because they didn't have enough face-to-face interaction with a faculty member. So it's, you know, we haven't quite gotten to the point where our systems will permit us to get out of the box that we're currently in. But we definitely are going to need to move in that direction, I believe.
And if
Other
I can
question?
just,
Oh, yes,
yeah, let me
Nicole.
just briefly add. So, unfortunately, I don't think the system as it exists today is nimble enough to move with the dynamic nature of California's economy. I don't know if I support a radical approach just yet, because I think the willingness is there. The structure of it creates barriers, and we have to start looking at how do we remove those barriers so that we can create a more nimble education system. I believe that at this point in time, it's going to be important for industry to work with policymakers and work with educators to understand the need, because we haven't been talking to each other as regularly as this new economy requires. Not everyone's aware of each other's pain points. So we all need to come together and have that conversation. I encourage everyone in the room, talk to your local elected officials. You'll probably get more, you'll have more productive conversations, I think, locally, because again, locally, you all are part of the same ecosystem. You understand. You just need to find those venues and venues of communication to share that information and then start making strides forward. But a lot of what's happening locally is driven by policies that exist statewide. So state policymakers need to hear from the business industry that there are barriers in the policies that you have created, past legislatures, and what is being created that is perpetuating this problem. If we start having those conversations, and then if there is somebody charged to look globally at the economy, not each sector watching their own movement, looking globally at California's economy, then I think we might be able to move through the changes that are going to be more technologically based, requiring more automation, requiring more robotic interface and integration into industry, and be able to see how we shuffle people around so that we're not getting mass, situations of mass joblessness because automation is coming in. I know the manufacturing industry is looking at that. We understand our jobs are shifting, so we're trying to accommodate that. But I think it really needs a global viewpoint to make sure, because we're talking about students, but there are still those who have barriers to the employment opportunity currently, and we have to make sure that they don't get lost and that list doesn't grow.
Very good. And I would say, if you haven't taken a look at the recently revised, updated Los Angeles County Strategic Plan, that there is a more of a global look, at least for Los Angeles, of what we need to do and how we need to continue to partner and how we need to be more nimble and not leave folks behind in the future economy. So we are out of time at this point, and I want to thank again Cal Lutheran University and Woodbury University for sponsoring the track, and our panel sponsor, UCLA Extension. And if you'll help give a round of applause for our panelists for their effort. I'm also going to remind you one more time to fill out the exit survey that is right there in front of you, and give that to our staff, the VICA staff who are here, or put it out in the foyer, or turn it in. The luncheon begins at 12:45. So in the meantime, I encourage you to visit all of the exhibitors and make sure that if you're playing bingo, that you return your bingo card, because in fact, you will have a chance to win such prizes as a round-trip flight on Southwest, a Rams package that includes 4 tickets and a signed football, and Magic Mountain tickets. So thank you and enjoy the rest of your time here.